Ooh, welcome to Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Money Mainville. Lots of stuff to cover. It has been about a week since we talked to you, and not a lot happened. It is the offseason. We'll take baseball, finish their season. That certainly happened. We had Selection Monday this afternoon. No great surprises. Indiana State screwed again, but everyone expected that. They're at 10 in the RPI. Do not host, and they got sent to the number 2 national seed. TCU left out of the tournament. Somebody asked me last week, would you rather have TCU's finish TCU season or Texas Tech season? TCU started poorly, finished strong. Texas Tech really did the opposite. And I said I would want to be the one that goes to the NCAA tournament. Neither went, so I would rather be neither of them. That's how it works. We are here with Money Mainville today. We've got some basketball to talk about. Let's jump right into it. And maybe the least interesting to both of us is the Grant McCasland in Colorado story we were talking about before the show. Is it cool for a resume on Coach McCasland's resume? Yeah, I think so. But I don't know that this under 18 Team USA thing does anything for Texas Tech basketball except maybe gets McCasland's foot in the door for bigger, better, different coaching opportunities in the summer in the future. Or maybe he just meets a kid who has a 12-year-old brother that might be really good in 6 years that you can recruit to Texas Tech.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not interesting as much as it is probably not directly impactful to Texas Tech's basketball program, at least with a direct kind of tie-in that you can trace, like in the form of obviously a recruit. You know, maybe that happens. If it does, it would be a big surprise and a very, very massive win from that relationship. But I think anybody expecting that kind of result from this probably should temper expectations a little bit. I do think it's great for Grant and his coaching experience. I think it says a lot about the way that he's viewed. I mean, last season was his first year at a high major program. Like, this is not a guy that's been coaching around in big jobs for a long time. Like, he had a lot of experience at lower levels at Navarro College and other JUCOs, and obviously what he did at UNT and turning that program around. But I think for him to kind of be emerging onto the scene as quickly as he has, and to get the recognition for what kind of coach he is, because I think he's a great coach. I think anybody that has watched him coach, has connected with him at a coaching level, would agree with me. And so I think it's obviously great recognition on his part, good exposure to rub shoulders. I believe Tommy Lloyd is going to be the head coach of that team. Micah Shrewsbury, the Notre Dame coach, is also on that staff. So, good for Grant to, be connected with, another Big 12 coach. I'm sure they'll be talking about the league during some downtime over the next couple of weeks. But, yeah, cool experience for him, I'm sure. But, yeah, I don't think there will be a ton of tangible results, at least that I can predict. Also, I think I said Navarro College. Grant was at Midland College.
Midland College. Yeah, great for Grant personally. And, I'm sure he's appreciative of the opportunity. I did not connect Arizona to the Big 12 when I was looking at Tommy Lloyd being the head coach. That is an interesting dynamic. They were not a part of the Big 12 landscape when I'm sure the staff was put together, but they are now. And they'll go play in Argentina, Belize, and Brazil if they move forward June 3rd through 8th. They'll play Belize to start in Group B. Oh, they'll play Argentina. Oh, they'll play Argentina, Belize, and Brazil. That was crazy. Real good of me to say that. With U.S. looking to improve 11-0 all time. against Brazil. They've won 10 gold medals in 12 iterations of the event, including 6 straight back to 2010. And this is for a berth into the 2025 FIBA Under 19 Men's World Cup. So there you go. If anything, it's good for Texas Tech to be associated and could create opportunities down the road for coaches, assistants, future head coaches, whatever the facts may be. But I again, as you said, I don't know if it's a tangible impact in the next 2 years for Texas Tech specifically. But for Grant, I think it's great. I really do. And it's some national exposure for the Double T.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I'm just flipping through old rosters, but Mike Boynton was an assistant coach on the 2022 team, and he coached Brandon Garrison there, who ended up going to Oklahoma State. Granted, Garrison is from Oklahoma City, I believe, so that makes it a little bit more of an obvious tie in there. But hey, you never know.
You, in fact, never know. Since the last time we recorded, Texas Tech also got a basketball recruit, a high school student named Mr. Anderson, Christian Anderson. Tell us a little bit about him, his journey, and how Texas Tech went from 0 high school prospects and people complaining to now a couple of pretty good ones.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic that's taken shape because you almost certainly were going to get some with how many roster spots you had available. You'd like to spend as much of that as you can in the portal. And I think they have done a good job at that so far. You still got 3 spots even after adding Anderson. So I'm certain there will be more that come from the portal, but I think they're kind of load the back half of your roster with some youth and some potential and some upside is a good idea. And it's always hard to predict how long you'll be able to hold on to that in today's college basketball. But whenever Grant was first hired, I kind of compared him to an index fund, and like the way he does things is probably going to be slow moving, but he's going to have a process. He's going to stick to it. And the guys that see that and buy into that are going to play for him for a long time. And so I think when you have a guy like Christian Anderson, who was the highest rated high school recruit still remaining for the class of 2024, it's a really, really good pickup. And by all guesses that I have in my mind, this is going to be your backup point guard next year. I think he will come in and kind of give Hawkins a rest. Granted, you have a lot of ball handlers on this roster, but maybe not guys that can really run the point. Like, I'm excited to see what Chance McMillan can kind of do with some of those minutes. Excited to see if Kevin Overton can handle the ball a little bit more. We saw flashes last year of even Darion Williams being able to initiate some offense. So you have options, but I think adding Anderson is a really smart pickup in terms of having another kind of true ball handler. Now, with Anderson, he is not a facilitator, at least not yet. He is a shot maker. And you turn on his highlights, you find any film that you can on him, that will become very, very obvious. Really good 3-level scorer, can catch and shoot off the ball, can create his own shot on dribble pull-ups. He can spot up and make a shot. But I think that's what I'm probably most excited for with him, is the shot making ability, his range from deep. I think that's going to be a really, really valuable thing for this team next year, because I think you've got some good pieces, specifically pieces that can play off the ball, but now you've got a guy who can really create his own shot. Now, with that said, the 2 biggest things that keep freshmen off the floor, especially in the Big 12, are size. Anderson is 5'11 to 6'1. depending where you look. I think he's actually probably a little bit on the higher end of that range. I think he probably is closer to 6'1". He is light. He looks light. But that's why you have strength and conditioning coaches. That's why you have a nutrition center. That's why you have these meal plans for these guys to kind of help put some weight on them as they adjust to the next level. And then the other thing is defense. And with only having access to high school tape, which is never really a abundance of content to sort through, don't really know where he's at with that right now. But if he can not get bullied, if he can play good on ball defense, if he can force turnovers, I think it's going to bode well for his minutes. But yeah, I would not be surprised if this is a rotation player next year. And I don't think I feel that way about any of the other freshmen. Maybe Leon Horner gives you something. I think he's got good size already, which is promising. I don't think that'll be Jazz Henderson unless I'm very surprised. But with Christian Anderson, I think the shot making and the offense are good enough to immediately contribute at the next level.
Would you say with the Anderson addition, guards are probably the guard spots are probably full, and you're gonna get some more wings and whatever else. And we'll talk about one wing that potentially is back in the mix for Texas Tech in a second.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're looking at a front court piece. Obviously, the main one that's been on everyone's radar for months now has been JT Toppin, who's got just a couple of more days left before he makes a decision on the NBA draft. And so I think you go front court and then probably another wing or two. But yeah, I think you're hinting at Jalen Wells of Washington State, who's also going through the draft process, has not made a decision either. But that kind of gives you two guys that you've been connected to in some form that are left to take up those three spots. So that leaves you with one left, assuming you land both of them, which I will talk about in a minute. But I don't think that's a likely outcome. If it is, you've got a top 5 roster in the Big 12, which is no joke considering how good this league's going to be next year, as it always is.
The draft withdrawal date is the 29th. That is Wednesday. Probably at 4 Eastern or something like that. So we had a list come out. I don't know, late last week probably, and it was players still in the NBA draft process. If they leave the NBA draft process, where would they commit? Toppin had a double T behind him, and Jalen Wells had a double T behind him. Toppin from New Mexico, and Wells from Washington State. You kind of alluded it to not being an either or, but being a one. You probably have a preference there. What does Toppin provide that Wells might not, or Wells provide that Toppin doesn't, that maybe you do just get one or the other, and maybe it's Wells and not Toppin?
Yeah, well, I think front court is still a bit of a question mark for me. I think you've got good pieces, but have you really, bulked up on that side of the court? I don't think you have yet. I mean, you've got good options with Federico Squared. I think he's a good rotational piece. You've got EY, who I'm really excited about and what he can contribute. Devin Cambridge, a little bit, how much does he want to play down low? How much does he want to play on the wing? Because I still think there's a lot of flexibility there. But I think you're still looking for kind of a starting caliber big man. And that's obviously JT Toppin. Very athletic, can shoot the ball really, really well, especially at his size. So I'm always a fan of guys that can space the floor, especially when they're down low. So I think that's a huge asset for him. With Wells, really, really good shot maker. Was 89th percentile in catch and shoot last year. Great size. I think he's 6'8", 6'9", playing the 2 or the 3 most of last year. So that's really, really, really enticing, because I think the mantra for the staff has been we need to get bigger, we need to get more athletic. That does not just mean down low. It means everywhere on the court. Because that was certainly the case last year. And so he's got length, he's got athleticism, he's got really good offensive game. It's just, do you need another piece on that side of the ball, or do you need something down low? And I think right now the priority is down low. Now, if Texas Tech can find a way to get both of those guys, by all means, I'm sure they'll try to do it, because I don't think you're really trying to pick or choose there. But, you know, does your budget allow for it? Does your minutes rotation allow for it right now? I think those are kind of some of the things that you've got to think through. But yeah, it would not hurt to land both of them. I just struggle to see that really panning out.
It would be awesome. And I don't want to speculate on the NIL value of anyone. It's such a long shot to say, anyways. But we have seen some numbers upwards of $2 million, which I still don't 100% believe, I think. I'm sure there was a quote that was $2 million, but I would assume that's not necessarily play based, but I'm sure there's some packages in there that are from the donors or from this or from that, and I think that's how you get to a 2 million number. But if you do add both of them, you can assume this is a healthy NIL roster, because you already have a couple of guys that were warranting big payments, and adding two more, I think, would prove probably that the Big 12 is here to play, and Texas Tech is at the top of the conference. Maybe not the top of the conference. Kansas, Baylor also adding some good NIL pieces, or transfer NIL pieces. But I think Texas Tech would be top 5 in roster salary cap. What do you call it in college basketball?
Yeah, spend.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be up there. If you get both, even if you just get top, and I think you're top 5 with Houston and Kansas and Baylor and Arizona probably. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, and I think the thing to reiterate there too is Wells and Toppin are both NBA draft guys at this point. Those guys are always going to have a higher price tag, not just because of, hey, we're good enough to where we can legitimately, have some conversations around the league and try to figure out, what option is best for us, but also because they know what NBA players make, and the difference between what you can get in a late second round pick as a rookie contract and what you can get in NIL at the collegiate level at a Power 5 school, that gap is becoming much smaller every single year. And especially now, so that, the market has had some big pieces go off the board with big price tags attached to them. I mean, they're both expensive, and I think that's probably the biggest reason why I don't think you end up with both of them. And I don't think Tech is poor either. Like, we talk about this at length on the podcast about how NIL has done a lot of good favors for Texas Tech. I think they continue to be in a good spot. They continue to be aggressive. But I mean, at the most conservative estimate, that could be 2 million between two players. That is no joke. That's more than half of what most teams are spending.
And even 2 years ago, when the conversation was that the NIL budget was crazy here, you're probably spending more on two players than you did on that roster, or at least even to that roster. So you'd be shelling it out, and you would have outbid some pretty big universities for the efforts of those young men, which is another conversation, I think. Which, don't always come down to money specifically, but I think money certainly plays a part there. All right, any other basketball news and notes that you want to rip before we move on?
I don't think so. I think it'll be a busy week, though. I think there will be a lot of conversations, a lot of steam, and hopefully a commitment.
Wednesday's the deadline. Do you think it'll happen by Wednesday, or do you think the deadline rolls and then it's a day or two, but this week for sure? What do you think on topping?
I think probably before the deadline.
Okay. All right. So Money Manville says tomorrow morning we'll wake up with the news of JT Toppin. Quote him there. Quote him there. All right. Let's see. Texas Tech football got some news at the end of last week. Not really specifically Texas Tech football, but the Texas Tech football program in the NCAA football game is going to get a Tier 4 payout, which is going to be $9,000 to appear in the game. Does that feel light? Yes. Tier 1, I think, was making like 100,000, Tier 2, 50, Tier 3, 39, and then Tier 4, 10, basically. Do you think that the AP poll, which is what these tiers are based on, should be the end all be all in ranking teams for the video game? I know it doesn't really matter, and this money does not really change any athletic department. If $20,000 changes your athletic department, you're in really bad shape. But do you think that that is a good barometer at all to rank teams based on payout?
Maybe. I think it's hard because it's been 11 years since the last game came out. A lot of things in the collegiate landscape have changed since then.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, it's almost like it's a completely different sport. And so I understand the merit of we're going to pay programs who have historically been successful over these last couple of years more money. But I think really what my thoughts on this come down to are first, I think it's their game. Like they're determining their payouts for this however they want to. So you're kind of at mercy for how they want to do it. Whether it's a good system or a bad system, sure, we can have a conversation about that. But ultimately it's their say. And then I think my other thought is just it is depressing to see Texas Tech in tier 4. Like whenever I first opened the graphic on Friday, I was looking at tier 1, looking at tier 2, looking at tier 3, and I'm like, man, where is Texas Tech? And I get to tier 4 and it's like you're right next to like Old Dominion, and it's just like that. It's not where you want to be. And
No.
so I think that's probably part of the reason why I would say, maybe this isn't the best system, because if there was another system that put Texas Tech in tier 2 or tier 3, then yeah, I might be a little bit more willing to listen to that system. But yeah, I think ultimately it's wild to see the company that they're in tier 4. And I mean, they're not alone. Like Nebraska is in there. Another Power 5 program who has a lot of tradition, has won a lot more historically than Texas Tech has even. But man, it's a good reminder of, you know, I think things with the football program are not perfect right now. I think you're still, not really at the ceiling that I think you can hit and that you want to hit. But man, it's been so much worse. And it hasn't been a long time since things have been so much worse.
There are 10 or 15 Power 5 programs in this bottom tier, the tier 4. Texas Tech, Vanderbilt, Duke, Boston College, Rutgers, Cal, Purdue, Nebraska, as you said, Virginia, and Illinois. I believe that's all the Power 5 teams. But you're the only Big 12 team in the bottom tier. Kansas, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State are all in Tier 3. In the ACC, Boston College, Duke, Cal, Virginia in Tier 4. The Big 10, Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers, Illinois. The only SEC team in Tier 4 is Vanderbilt. Has Kansas been a better college football program over the last 10 years as a whole than Texas Tech?
No.
No. Has Iowa State, for the full 10 years, been a better football program than Texas Tech? I would say no as well. Now, if you put that as 5 years, yeah. For the last 5 years, I think Iowa State's probably been above Texas Tech, maybe 6 or 7. But the full 10, I don't know. And then, I guess their first winning season in the Campbell era was 2017, which we're getting back there in the years that you're going back all the way to 2017. They've had some pretty good years since. But I just maybe it just puts into perspective how bad you've been over the last decade. And we've said this has been Texas Tech's worst decade in football history. This was Iowa State's best decade in football history. They're Tier 3 and you're Tier 4. So maybe there's some perspective for you there. I think both programs feel good about the upcoming year. Iowa State a lot of adversity at the beginning of last year with the gambling scandal. But I think they overperformed what people thought they would do after the gambling scandal. And I think they played a lot of young players. And I think they'll be pretty good this year. Texas Tech had a lot of momentum coming in. And I don't think they performed up to the expectation. But it did, through injuries, play a lot of young players as well. And I think they have some young experience now that will allow them to be good this year. But Tier 4 is just crazy to me. But you haven't been ranked. And I don't think you've been ranked. Did you ever get in the top 25 last year? I don't believe so. You go back to 2013, you were ranked, but that was not in the cutoff. It was 2014 was the cutoff, 2014 to 23. It's just kind of a burden mentally to say that Kansas has been ranked way more than you, or at least Tier 3 level. But that's all in the last 2 seasons. I mean, they were winning 1 or 2 games a year before that.
Yeah. Last time Tech was in a AP poll was 2018. So, I mean,
go Cliff.
6 years of
5-3, 5-0 that year.
Yeah. 6 years of blanks is not going to do you any favors in a averaged out,
no,
ranking system like that. But yeah, to see Kansas above you is wild.
Of the Power 5 teams in Tier 4, and maybe we're too close to Texas Tech to really say this, but who would you buy low on beyond Texas Tech? I mean, Vanderbilt is going to be Vanderbilt. Maybe the Matt Rule era Nebraska team can get it going, but their side of the conference just got tougher, in my opinion, with USC and Oregon. And then Wisconsin and Iowa are who they are. Boston College, Duke, Cal, Virginia, you don't think any of them really have upward trajectory where they are or what they will be. So I do feel like if anybody moves out of Tier 4 in the next game or 2, it's going to be Texas Tech.
And that'll be interesting to see kind of what the payout looks like going on, because I imagine this will be a game that comes out every year. So now does this become, how many weeks you were in the AP poll the last season? Or does it move to 5-year average? Or do you just move up a year in a 10-year average? I don't know.
Or will it be based on the rankings just from the previous year? and you go, I don't know, S&P Plus or something like that ranks the entire football world. You go the Football Power Index, something like that, and move on from there. I don't know. I don't know how they'll do it. We did see some new information floating around. I think this afternoon I saw it from Reddit, which is what it was, a Reddit screenshot on Twitter. But they were talking about how immersive the dynasty mode will be, the franchise mode, whatever you want to call it. I'm a little bit worried. I've been out of the video game life for a couple of years now. The last couple of Madden franchises I did, I just kind of coached through them and did a little bit of playing. But I think you're going to have a really frustrating experience in this new college football game. Keeping players. I think there's going to be a really diverse, maybe glitchy, in my opinion, morale code that you have to keep up with. Your star quarterback, your backup quarterback. I bet you never get to keep a backup quarterback and get them in year 3 or 4 like you used to could. Running back touches are going to be more interesting. Wide receiver touches are going to be more interesting. You can't just throw it to one guy the whole game. It's going to be interesting. And I don't know if I like it or don't like it. If you don't like today's landscape of college football, I don't think you're going to like the game much. If you love how college football is going, you might love the new game. But I think the transfer portal is going to be a big addition to the game, and it's going to be so frustrating. It really is. And I also saw, this is just some guy saying, "Hey, my brother is this lower level EA sports guy, and he told me this." But they also said recruiting rankings will affect your job status, and you can also negotiate contracts as a coach in this game. So that's new because you just got like a blanket contract into the 2014 game. So,
Yeah, you're gonna have to play completely different than you did NCAA 14. Like the way I used to do dynasties was just hammer recruiting and then sign as many guys as I can. But then, I would play offline most of the time and I was just playing for fun. So I would have injuries off. And then you just go through your roster and you can literally redshirt every single player who's not a starter.
yep.
And then those guys are going to develop. They're going to stay on your team. Like maybe you lose like a 71-year overall offensive lineman, but whatever. I've got 6 more on the bench that just redshirted and are now 80 overalls. That kind of gameplay is so toast, in my opinion. You're gonna absolutely lose your roster if you try something like that. So I think that part will be interesting. I don't think there's gonna be any like storyline to Road to Glory, which I'm actually excited for, because I much prefer to just play than have to watch a bunch of cutscenes. Really just in sports video games.
Those Spike Lee 2K cutscenes were a chore sometimes.
They're so bad, and 2K as a game is just garbage now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think, like, I just wanna play, so let me play, let me do some fun things, week to week, give me more than just one practice option with 25 reps, let me, like, negotiate with some NIL, let me, choose what I'm gonna, if I pass it to this guy, maybe it boosts his morale for the week and he has a better chance of staying on the team. But yeah, I'm not a fan of all the narration movie scenes. It's just not me.
In the real world, we also had some court cases moving forward at the end of last week. Just really quickly, because it's such a broad and huge topic. What are your thoughts on the revenue sharing and everything else that was voted on in the last week? Do you have any thoughts? Because it still feels like you're going to be able to. I heard this week you're still going to be opt in and out, but now there's a backlog and the potential for in 2 years paying money not through like the Matador Club, but through Texas Tech University. You're going to cut checks through the university. Do you have any concerns, growing concerns, or do you feel like this is just the natural progression?
Yeah, I have no idea how this is going to affect things.
Me
I think
neither.
it's an attempt to kind of maybe clean up some of the chaos, but I have no idea what the ultimate trickle down effect will be. Stars just tied the game at 2.
Oh, did they? Oh, yep, there it is. I saw that they had scored. Oh, Jason Robertson. There you go. I was streaming and I just got off of it to look at some things. Angel Hernandez is retired or retiring. There's some controversy on what's exactly going on, but uh, you down for that? The Angel Hernandez retirement tour?
That's got to be like the saddest thing to just like if I was an MLB umpire, I would never be on social media. If I was doing anything else with my life other than working in social media and podcasting and enjoying covering sports, I would not touch social media. But to be in such a judged profession and like he sucks, like
We
it's well earned, but to just like announce you're retiring, like your family's probably really happy for you, get to spend more time with them, get to spend time with your friends, and it's just like everyone is just like celebrating you being gone. That's got to be brutal.
So it does look like it's going to be official tomorrow. Major League Baseball and Hernandez had spent the last 2 seasons, negotiating a financial settlement. So he's retiring. Um, there you go. Thank God. Thank the baseball gods. Hernandez is gone. Greatest Angel Hernandez moments. There's a strikeout of Wyatt Langford this year that was particularly egregious. Obviously, you go back to he was the Galarraga perfect game, right?
I think so, yeah.
At first base. Was he? But maybe he was just on that crew. That might not have been Angel Hernandez. Regardless, lots of quote unquote great moments from him. We also have Bill Walton passing today, the legendary Grateful Dead fan and college basketball legend, especially amongst the Pac 12. Any great Bill Walton memories? I don't think I didn't hold on to many Bill Walton memories. I just had Jim Joyce. Sorry. No, oh, there's Gamblin Gauchos commenting on ourselves here. Yeah, that was Jim Joyce. Any legendary Bill Walton moments you remember?
Yeah, so it's not my cup of tea in terms of like true color commentary, but to say he was not entertaining would be a lie. Like he was a lot of fun on a broadcast crew. And so certainly will miss kind of that aspect of it. He enjoyed the game of basketball, enjoyed the entertainment that it provided, and was one of a kind for sure. Um, it's also just crazy to think that he passed, days after the last Pac-12 game we'll ever see.
Yeah, really the day after the final Pac-12 event. Rest in peace. Stars up 3-2 now. All right, I want to run through the Matador Transit mailbag. We generally do this On Wednesdays, behind the Patreon episode, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. But since we have a week here that we can get into a couple of questions, I do want to clean up the mailbag a little bit. So this will be a free preview to the mailbag that we do in the Patreon world. When does Big 12 football head coach position power ranking season start? To me, it started, what was it? Friday night when Texas Tech lost. Now that there are no Texas Tech athletics to talk about, we will start what's called Mount Rushmore season in the business and probably get to several of those in the next several weeks. But generally, I would say mid-June, where you're really digging the bottom of the bucket for content. And then July, really heavily, you are doing all kinds of lists to get through the world of sports. Do you like lists? Are you a list guy? A listicle guy?
Depends what they are.
Yeah, same. Drew Brees, overrated, underrated, properly rated.
Based on who's ranking. Public
Uh,
opinion. I feel like people are
Public.
pretty polarized on him. Properly rated.
I would say properly rated too. He was kind of now he won a Super Bowl with the Saints. Yes, in 2013 ish. I think in the world of quarterbacks, maybe he's potentially a little underrated because he went toe to toe with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning statistically in that era, but is a distant third to those two. 2010 was the Super Bowl. I would say cusp of properly and underrated a little bit, but I don't think Drew Brees was overrated.
I
He
think
was
that's
a
where I
little
land.
he was a little bit of a stats guy. I think he had a lot of stats and not a lot of substance. But I wouldn't say he is overrated. I don't think people talk about him enough for him to be overrated, especially since retirement. It, right when he retired, people stopped talking about him because Tom Brady went and broke all his records that he had kind of wrested away from Peyton Manning. And I think a lot of his stats were longevity based. So, I don't know. I think he's properly rated. Fairly or unfairly? This is a good question. Good question from Smart Football. Shout out to Smart Football. Fairly or unfairly, who was most disliked assistant by the general Texas Tech fan base? Matt Gardner, David Yost, David Gibbs. There are three names, so we'll start bench cut. Gardner, Yost, Gibbs.
You'll have to help me on Gardner because I know he's a polarizing one, to say the least.
Yeah.
I feel like Yost is pretty fairly not appreciated.
Yeah.
Um,
Yost had a lot of yards per game, but to be tied with Matt Wells and to only last 2 seasons, I think was fair.
and maybe part of it was too like coming off of the explosiveness of the Cliff era. But man, that offense was boring. It was
So
boring.
they were an ace, basically. Maybe they moved the tight end around a little bit, but they had one formation, basically, and ran everything out of it. I might go David Gibbs should be the most disliked. I think he was the worst. He had one season where they got a lot of turnovers, but they were so bad. Those defenses were so bad. And on the other side, the offenses were so good, even in those last couple of seasons. Man. Did Gibbs get 4 seasons at Texas Tech? Was he 15, 16, 17, 18?
I think so.
Tough. He might have been there the final 5 seasons. And then Gardner, I'll say this about Gardner and the rest. There are well-defined parameters for what Yost was doing and what Gibbs was doing. I don't think we really know what extent Gardner has control on the pitching staff. Because generally baseball managers, head coaches, make the in-game decisions with who's up in the pen, who's going out there, when they make that decision. Hey, go talk to him. Gardner calls the games from the dugout. But who all is working? Is Ray Hayward still involved? I do not know enough of the inner workings of the baseball program. So I think maybe unfairly Gardner is pegged as the guy who has caused the downfall of Texas Tech pitching that people talk about all the time. There's a new hit phrase that everybody wants to use is Gardner likes throwers and not pitchers. But I don't think you've had that the last 2 seasons. I don't think you've had the John McMillans and the guys throwing 98. And I think Tennessee has a bunch of throwers and not pitchers, and they do pretty well with it. So I don't know exactly. So I'd probably put Gardner third there. I'd probably go Gibbs, Yost, Gardner. Because I think the baseball stuff could be more evenly spread through the staff and not just pinned on Gardner, in my opinion. This with the success of the Stars and Mavs in the last week, does Jerry Jones care that he is the owner of the worst professional sports franchise in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex?
He should.
He should, but if you asked him that off camera, I wonder what he would say. Because regular season wise, the Cowboys have been very good in the last 3 or 4 seasons. One of the most winning regular season records, maybe to the Chiefs. And they still make billions of dollars. So I think it is. And with the playoff success, it certainly is more feasible to say it is the worst. With the Stars in the Western Conference Finals, the Rangers winning the World Series. But in the last 5 years, the Rangers have been the worst. They just kind of caught fire last year and won a World Series, but they've been the worst team in the last 5 years. The Mavs, even with Luka Doncic, have missed or been a bubble team in the playoffs. Not winning a lot of regular season games, but they're cruising toward a NBA Finals appearance. Up 3-0 on Kyle's Timberwolves. Interesting. You're out with the boys. What cold one are you cracking? Do you have a go-to beer?
If I'm at a local Dallas bar, I'll go Deep Ellum Brewing Dallas Blonde. I also like a Carbach Love Street.
That's a good one.
But if I'm just drinking like regular staple domestics, it's usually a Miller Lite.
I'm not beholden to a brand. Have you ever had an espresso martini?
I do, and I enjoy it. No shame.
I think that's just because you're a coffee guy. You said that.
Yeah.
I've never had one. Was that just espresso and vodka? Is there vermouth in
It's
there?
coffee liqueur too.
Okay, I'd try it.
If you want a party, get one.
I like a vodka Red Bull, so that doesn't scare me. The caffeine, I don't get jittery. Let's see. There's some Baron shoulder questions. I think I'm gonna save that one for Wednesday. Um, let's see. Besides Plinko, what Price is Right game would you want to play?
I know none of them.
I think I'd be really good at the higher or lower game, where you have to go down the line and say this one costs more or less than the previous item. I have not watched Price is Right in years, and I don't feel like Price is Right. Maybe that's just not on my algorithm. I don't see Price is Right clips anymore. Does anybody watch Price is Right anymore? I see Jeopardy clips and Wheel of Fortune clips. There was the Wheel of Fortune clip this week, the right in the butt guy, um, which was hilarious. Have you seen? When's the last time you saw a Price is Right clip?
It's funny because I actually think I saw one
Oh,
yesterday. Now that I think
there you
about
go.
it,
There you
they were
go.
doing like guess the number. I have no idea how that show works. But there was like a series of numbers. They had to pick a number, and they got all 5 right, and they won a new car.
Nice. Let's see. Do you know anything about soccer?
No,
All right. Well, there's this question here that neither of us are going to be able to answer, but I think I want to take a stab at it. What would be the American equivalent of Vincent Company getting the Bayern Munich job straight after going down with Burnley? This sentence is barely English to me, but I believe he was coaching a team that got demoted, relegated, and then got a top job after that. So to me, this would be like coaching the Arizona Cardinals to, you know what? Really, it's like Cliff coaching Texas Tech to a non bowl game season, getting fired, and then getting an NFL head coaching job. I think maybe that's the closest thing to it. Yeah. Starter says Cliff. Interesting. All right. We will clean up the rest of this on Wednesday. There's a great color rush question. Are you down for color rush jersey since you won't be there on Wednesday in college football?
love them.
So let's say all red. Let's say Texas Tech is playing Oklahoma State. Would you be down with an all red versus all orange?
That's an ugly matchup. I like
Or maybe
I like
maybe
a red and blue.
maybe an all red versus an all black. How about that?
Yeah, or like
All
if Tech
orange
wears
versus
all
all black.
black versus Kansas State and they're wearing the lavenders.
Yeah.
Wouldn't hate that. Or like if you play Kansas and they wear blue, I'm fine with you
Black and
wearing
blue.
all red.
Red and blue. Yeah. I'm down with that. Maybe a red versus green Christmas butt bowl. West Virginia, Texas Tech red and blue would be good. That would be a nice matchup. Even if it was color rush and it was all whites versus all reds, kind of an icy combo versus a maybe a TCU purple, all purple versus red. I don't know. I don't like the red helmet. So there's one part of it. All right, that's all I got. Stars, Oilers heading to the third period very soon. We'll go watch the third period here. Any final thoughts?
Love y'all.
There you go. Oh, wait, before we leave, Barnett, Howard, and Williams, the finest law firm in Fort Worth. I had that up to do it earlier, and I forgot. They are based in Fort Worth, but do work all across the state of Texas. Family law, catastrophic injury, Title IX, criminal. They can help you out. They don't want to have you call them, but if you need to call them, they are there for you and can get you right. BHW Law Firm. And again, that was the Matador Transit mailbag. We'll be back on Wednesday, live on the Gamblin Gauchos Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. As always, thank you to the Republic of Texas football feed. And as Money just said, love y'all.